dancers, my name's Greer. I'm the Pointe Shoe Specialist here at Discount Dance Supply, and today I'm going to be talking to you about sewing ribbons and elastic on your pointe shoes, which is probably one of the most asked questions that I get. So there are several different ways that you can sew your ribbons and elastic. There's really no hard and fast rules. It's kind of whatever works for you as a dancer. And the more you dance on pointe, the more you'll figure out how you like your shoes to be sewn, how you like your elastics and ribbon, what kind of elastics and ribbon you like, if you want your elastics crisscrossed, if you just want one loop. So this is really just to show you just the kind of basics of how to sew ribbons and elastic in kind of the most simple fashion. So I'm going to show you how to do one shoe that's just a regular loop of elastic that goes across the ankle with ribbons. And then I'm going to do one shoe that has crisscross ribbons, or crisscross elastic, and then regular ribbons as well. And the main reason that people do crisscross elastic is it really helps to secure the shoe onto the foot. So it helps pull the heel up in the back, and it also just feels more secure on the foot. That's not for every dancer. If you don't feel like you need that, then by all means just do the regular loop of elastic, and that should be more than enough. Okay, so I have some supplies here to show you guys kind of how to do this. And so the first thing you want obviously is your pair of pointe shoes that you're going to be sewing. Then you want some kind of stitch kit. I'm using the bun head stitch kit right now. It has a pretty thick, heavy duty needle. The only time you don't really want a needle like this is if you're sewing gainers, because their satin and lining is bonded. It's not hung like traditional pointe shoes. So you actually want a very, very thin, fine needle, because that has a lot of kind of thick material to go through. It's a lot more difficult to sew, so you don't want to be pulling through a really thick needle in that. But I'm not sewing gainers today, so I'm just going to be using the kind of heavy-duty needle that comes in the stitch kit. And then you also want thread. Some dancers prefer to use floss, like dental floss, because it's really strong and doesn't break easily. So I'm just using this nice pink kind of waxed thread that comes in the bun head stitch kit. And then of course you want your ribbons and elastic. I have some mesh elastic here that has become pretty popular. It is not as visible on stage, so a lot of dancers prefer this, especially for performance. It has a lot of stretch and elasticity to it, so it's really comfortable. And then I just have some regular, plain old, simple elastic. This one's by Russian Point. Lots of stretch to this one as well. And then I have two different kinds of ribbon, just your basic satin ribbon. This one is just a nice Grishko satin ribbon. You want to sew your shoes with the satin facing out, the nice shiny part facing out. And then I also have full stretch ribbon, which has also become pretty popular recently. This one's by Primasoft, but a lot of different brands make it. And it's just a very, very stretchy ribbon. And that is really just kind of a preference thing. If you prefer that kind of ribbon, by all means use that. It's not necessary. This helps a lot with dancers who have like problems with their Achilles or some kind of tendonitis, and the regular ribbon, they feel kind of rubbing or pain with that. This has a lot more give to it, so a lot of dancers prefer to use that instead. There's also regular ribbon that has just a piece of elastic sewn into it. Bunheads makes one like that. And that piece of elastic in the ribbon is supposed to go around the Achilles to kind of make that part a little softer. That's something to look into as well. And then you're going to want a pen, and you're going to want some scissors. Okay. Another thing you can do before you start, and I recommend if you're a younger dancer to have your parents help you with this, is I always singe whatever I'm doing with a lighter or a match, like the edges of everything. The edges of your elastic, the edges of your ribbon, because that's going to keep any of it from fraying or kind of coming undone after you're done sewing it. Okay, but for these purposes, we're not going to do that right now. So first, I'm going to mark where I want to sew the ribbons on these shoes. So for this shoe, I'm just going to do a loop of elastic and 2 ribbons on either side. So what you want to do, again, this is the most basic way to do this. You can sew your ribbons kind of wherever works for you. Some people sew them at the highest point of the arch. So you want to put the shoe on your foot and kind of mark on it where the highest point of your arch is, and that's where you want to sew your ribbon, so it really pulls up in that area so it looks aesthetically pleasing. Otherwise, you just want to kind of fold the satin down on the shoe like this. So the heel is folded down into the inside of the shoe. take your pen and just mark where the fold is on the inside of the shoe. That's where your elastic, or that's where your ribbon, I'm sorry, is gonna go. So either side there. Your elastic, so you wanna measure this on your foot, so put your point shoe on and then kind of measure how you want your elastic to feel. You want it to be nice and taut, but you don't want it cutting off the circulation, obviously. So a pack of elastic is usually good to do a pair of shoes if you're just doing a loop. If you're crisscrossing, you need 2 packs. So I'm just gonna cut this guy in half. And then I would singe both of these edges before you start sewing as well to kind of make sure nothing frays. And then what I usually suggest if you're just doing basic elastic is you want to do it maybe 1/8 of an inch on either side of the heel seam back here. So not directly on the heel seam, but just slightly to either side on the right and left of the back heel seam. That's where you're going to want to sew your elastic loop on the inside like so. Alright, so I like to sew elastic first. It doesn't really matter if you sew ribbon or elastic first, but I'm going to go ahead and sew this elastic. So just like you're sewing anything else, you want to thread your needle. And these needles have a pretty big eye, so you don't usually need like a little threader for this. Pull it through. Now parents ask me all the time about how to sew point shoes, and I always tell them that they need to have their dancers sew it. So dancers, you need to learn how to sew your own point shoes. Mom is not always going to be there to do that for you, and it's your responsibility to kind of learn how to do this. Obviously, you know, have adult supervision. Maybe the first time let mom do it, second time maybe go ahead and take that on yourself. And also you want to learn, you know, where you want to place your ribbons and elastic. Like I said, there's no kind of hard and fast rules for it. You know, there's general guidelines, but you want to learn what works for you. The only kind of full stop guideline I'll give you is sew nothing after this mid seam. You don't want to sew anything towards the box. All your sewing should happen between this mid seam to the back heel. It should all exist in this area, nothing up here. Okay, now I am not really precious and careful when I sew point shoes because you're really not going to see any of this from stage. So don't feel like you have to do this like very, very carefully and make beautiful, perfect stitches. It can be a little messy, you know, don't make it look crazy and sloppy, but you know, don't feel like you have to do this absolutely perfectly. Okay, so I'm going to start sewing this elastic. So I'm placing just one side of the elastic about 1/8 of an inch to the left of the heel seam here. So you can fold this over if you want, just to kind of give it a little more stability. Fold it over right there and sew like that. I don't really typically do that. I mean, I've never had elastics come off, so I think this method works just fine, just doing it straight like that. But if you feel like you want more security, you can double that edge over and start sewing it like that. Okay. Okay, again, so you're just kind of 1/8 of an inch on the other side of the heel seam. And that's where you want to sew, and make sure you have, you know, enough elastic down here. You don't want to sew it to where there's just barely any elastic that's in the shoe. You do want, you know, a decent amount of elastic inside of the shoe right there. So when you are sewing your ribbons, you want to go back to those little marks that we made on the inside with a pen. and that's where you want the back part of your ribbons to be. So you want to take this and fold it over like so. And again, you want the shiny satin part to be on the outside, so that is what is seen. So you want to take this inside here, right about where you have your marking, and angle it just a little bit towards the box of the shoe, because that's the way that it's going to end up wrapping. So you want to angle this slightly to the front and make sure that you have enough ribbon on the inside here so that you can sew that nice and securely. Now, some people only sew through this lining right here, so it's not seen on the outside satin at all. I don't do that technique. It's a little time consuming. You have to be a little more careful to just catch your needle on the inside lining here, the cotton lining, and not on the outside satin. I sew straight through both, but keep in mind you can do that if you want a really clean outside appearance on the outside satin of the pointe shoe. You can just stitch through that and catch the ribbon into the lining and do a whip stitch that way. Otherwise, I've never had a problem, or there's plenty of dancers who do it this way too, of just sewing straight through the lining and the satin into the ribbon as well. I feel like that also makes it a little bit more secure, so that's just my preference. And so I kind of do a box around, so I'll do like a whip stitch here from the shoe into the ribbon all the way back, and then the same down here, the same on the side, and then just go straight across the top to really secure it in. So this is what your inside looks like. You can clean this up by just snipping that, singeing that so it's nice and tight to the shoe. So you've just created a box stitch around here, doing whip stitches back and forth from the shoe into the ribbon. Same thing on the sides, and the front just all the way across the top, being sure not to catch your drawstring. So that's your inside. And then on the outside, it's created a square of stitches. Now up close, this doesn't look super pretty, but from stage, you're not really gonna be able to tell anything is there. Okay, so that is one ribbon. I'm just gonna do the exact same thing on the other side of the shoe with the same ribbon. Okay, so I'm just gonna show you what a finished pair looks like. I've already sewn these. So this is what a finished pair looks like when you just have your regular loop elastic and ribbon on each side. So loop towards the back of the heel right here, and then your ribbon on either side, okay? So now I'm gonna talk about sewing crisscross elastic. Like I said, that's also an option you can do if you want a more secure feel to the shoe or a really pulled up back heel. So I'm going to be showing you how to do that using this covert mesh elastic by Block. So this you want to cut into 4 pieces. So it comes along like this, go half and then quarter. That's how you want these. Okay, so you're going to start the shoe the same thing you would with just regular loop of elastic. So you want to first measure where you want your ribbon. So like I said, you fold into the shoe right here and mark your inside where that creases. Again, that's just the most simple basic way to mark where you want your ribbons, but you can definitely have them further front if you feel that that is where the top of your arch ends, the highest point of your arch, because that's where you really want that to be pulled up. Okay, so you have your 2 little pin marks here. So the way you would sew crisscross elastic is you would sew the back part first on either side of the heel. Again, you want to go maybe 1/8 of an inch on either side of the back heel and sew that. And then same thing with the other side. Go ahead and sew both of those first. So the ones on either side of the back heel, sew that first. And then you want to cross over, and what makes life a lot easier when you're doing that, because this elastic, you can put it at the same place as the ribbon goes. is you sew it at the same time as your ribbon. So in that case, you would put these two guys together, fold them over, and sew where your mark is on the inside here, sew both of them together, tilted slightly towards the toe box because that's how you want it to be able to wrap that way. So I have some of those that I've already sewn as well. So this is what this looks like. So this makes it more aesthetically pleasing because your ribbon is covering your elastic here. Going to the back, same thing on that side, your ribbon and elastic sewn together at the front part of the shoe. And then that's just a prettier, cleaner kind of look on stage. So dancers, I hope this has been helpful. Let us know if you have any questions. We'll try to get to those, and thanks for watching.